Tua Tagovailoa, that's the big, the big topic of this week is really that he had a hip surgery today. This morning, actually, he dislocated his hip in the Crimson Tide's 38-7 win over Mississippi State on Saturday. He was injured with only 3 minutes left remaining before halftime, Al. Brought down by two Mississippi State Bulldog defenders, rolling over onto looks like his right hip, kind of jarred it there and dislocated his hip. They had a CAT scan and an MRI in Birmingham, flew him to Birmingham, and then immediately flew him to Houston and got a consult, and they decided that he would go under surgery to get that repaired as quickly as possible to save his football career. Very serious injury there, and something that our thoughts and prayers go out to him for sure. But it was definitely something that was pretty controversial because they were up by so many points before halftime, right before halftime, really. As you can see there in the video that we're playing, you can see when they're in the huddle, it seems like Nick Saban wasn't originally going to let him go back out there. And then he comes over and kind of pats him on the shoulder. We don't know what he said, but Nick Saban laughs, which he rarely ever does. And then he goes back into the game. Now, a lot of people are saying he should have never been in the game. This is why you take people out. This is why you take your starters out when it's a blowout like that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if I feel that way from the start, but what did you think?
Yeah, it's really a difficult call. I mean, to be honest, I think most teams kind of keep their starters in, at least a little bit into the second half. I mean, Clemson does the same thing with Trevor Lawrence. He was playing into the third quarter as well. So it's kind of really difficult to go by as far as that's concerned. I mean, every situation's different. I think in this case, one of the things I kind of thought about while I was watching the game is that, Saban probably thought, at this point with the loss to LSU and not going to be able to, or most likely not going to be able to make the championship game in the SEC. I mean, he's going to need to blow out people to kind of make a statement that Alabama still deserves a chance if a spot were to open up. Obviously, one of the Pac-12 teams or somebody would probably have to fall off in order for that to happen, in order for Bama to sneak back into the picture. But I mean, you kind of got to play as if you still got a chance, right? So I think a lot of people still want to talk about Bama. They're still a household name. They're still a big brand. So anything that they can do to kind of keep their hopes alive, I think they're going to do it. I know Saban, I think, said after the game that he was wanting to practice the 2-minute drill with Tua, and I don't believe that one bit. Actually, Tua's been through a million 2-minute drills, so I don't think that was a problem. I think that was more of an excuse, but at the same time, I don't think he needed an excuse. I mean, like I said, people play their starting quarterbacks into the third quarter all the time. So it's not anything you have to apologize for. It's just kind of an unfortunate situation. He could have got hurt the very first play of the game. It's just kind of the way football goes.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter immediately people saying, hey, he should have never been in the game. That's ridiculous. What was Nick Saban thinking? He doesn't care about his players. I don't believe that he doesn't care about his players at all. When I look back, and I'm not an elite player at all. I played soccer in high school and walked on at Anderson, was a tackle dummy, basically. I was a practice dummy. But even in the short amount of time that I played sports, I remember going out there, and even Al, when you and I played basketball, I remember going out there, you played one game, you wanted to play 2 more games that night. Hey, right. A game was over, I wanted to go play a pickup game, outside or something. I just wanted to keep playing. And these guys, you got to remember, they're 21, 22 years old, 20 years old. And so they're wanting to play as much as they can. They're not going to get a chance when they're probably 40, like most of us, or 35, or hey, even me, 32. You're not going to get a chance to play like that anymore. And so you got to take advantage of it. I remember before I tore my ACL, and I've tore my right ACL twice, and it's a very hard road to come back. But I remember that feeling of that no fear of injury. I never thought of injury. I never went into a game saying, oh man, what happens if I get hurt? I think if you're thinking that way, you shouldn't be playing at all, because who knows what you're going to do. You're probably going to do some more dangerous stuff if you're worried about getting injured. And you're constantly trying to brace yourself. How many people do you see get hurt bracing themselves? Right. I mean, that kind of happened to Justin Ross this weekend. He kind of tried to brace his fall and rolled up on his wrist. I mean, you can't plan for that kind of stuff. And that's for me. Hey, now after having a major knee surgery, when I go out and play with my daughter or play a pickup game with some kids at church, it's always in the back of my mind. I got injured before. I would give anything to go back and not have to worry about that, really. So I don't blame anybody for saying they didn't think about getting injured, because I think that's the way you have to play. Yeah. But I know a lot of people are saying, well, he was up by so much. But if you look at Trevor Lawrence, like you just mentioned, Clemson and a lot of other coaches out there, they're not taking their quarterback out in the first half. For me, if I was a coach, I would say even in a blowout, you need to play through the first half. We've seen the problem with that in this year with Charlotte game. It looked like Trevor Lawrence got taken out way too early. And then the very next game against UNC, he was kind of rusty. It was almost like he had been sat down for two and a half weeks. So I wouldn't say, because at that point, if you're only playing 2 or 3 snaps or 2 or 3 series, you basically didn't even play that week. So it's almost like you have to play him some. And I mean, like Nick Saban said, he is the starter. That's how we treat him. You don't think it's going to happen like that. And that accident, and I listened to Kelly this today at lunch. She read some of the medical stuff behind that. That was a freak accident, man. I mean, that just to have something like that pop out a joint and then also fracture. Some people say, well, he already came into the game injured, but that was his ankle, and they had already had surgery on it, and it was something that they were familiar with last year, so they kind of knew how to handle it. It wasn't something super similar. This was a completely different thing, and I don't know. Maybe we're way off base. Maybe I'm off base. Maybe Alan's off base. Another big question that came in was not only should he or should he not have played, but another question was, now should they drop, even though they won, should they drop a lot in tomorrow night's college football rankings, because everybody knows that he's out for the season?
Yeah, I don't know that they should necessarily drop all that much. I mean, I think we've seen enough of Mac Jones to think that he's a serviceable quarterback at least. And they're still Alabama. They still have Alabama playmakers. So I don't think they're going to drop too much. I mean, they maybe a spot or two or something like that, but I don't think it's that big a deal really going forward. I think I don't want to say they're about the same team with Mac Jones as they are with Tua, because that's not exactly what I mean. But I think they fall about the same place in the top 10 for me. It's just, like I said, a spot or two difference, and I don't think that's that big a deal. We're getting a lot of people in, on Facebook talking about kind of saying the exact same things that you were talking about earlier about he was already injured going into the game. I know you mentioned that earlier. Corey gets in and talks about, Tua is a competitor and wants to be in the game, and he's 100% right. I mean, that's a lot of these guys want to be in the game. Kind of a question that somebody got in, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on. I heard a little bit of them talking about it today. I think Kelly was talking about it as well. It says, how far could Tua drop in the draft with all these injuries in college? And now, obviously, there's something to play out there. Obviously, they've got to kind of take these next several months and kind of see how he responds. And especially, I mean, come draft time, I think that's April, something like that. I mean, they'll kind of know a little bit better about how he's progressing and, how things are going there. But I think it could make a significant impact on his draft stock, maybe having him fall all the way out of the first round, at least as a possibility. What are your thoughts on that?
If it were me and I was a GM, I wouldn't take somebody that couldn't start this next season coming up.
Right.
What we're hearing is that it is way too out there to say that he's going to be ready in 6 months. That's way too soon. This is not something that you can really, because of the fracture, because of the dislocation there. This is something that basically something similar ended Bo Jackson's career. Mm-hmm. And so this is something that you got to take very serious. Kelly was mentioning that the doctors that they had around them said that he's going to make a full recovery, but that it's more likely going to be 12 months. So you're talking about this time next year, ready to play football again. That's a big deal right there. I mean, you're talking about, remember just a few years ago, you'd think ACL was more of a 12-month. Now we're seeing it's more 6-7 month. Some cases in the elite of elite, 5 months. But for me, it was 12 months. Everybody's a little bit different. You can't just say cut and dry, going to be 12 months, because it all depends on how his body responds to the rehab. That's what's interesting about rehab nowadays is back in the day, my dad used to tell me about how if you got injured, you would basically laid up in a hospital for days. But nowadays, especially when I had my surgery and you're seeing all these other guys get surgery, they immediately start walking around. They immediately start lifting light weights, maybe rubber band type stuff. They try to do squats. They try to do twists and turns, and they try to actually start moving it from day one or day two after the major surgery, which is crazy to say, but that's kind of what they've seen as work best. And I believe that works best I think that works in Tua's favor for a quicker recovery, because He's got the best of best facilities, just like Deshaun Watson had, just like Amari Rodgers has. He has the best, so he's going to get the best. And as long as he puts his mind to it and doesn't get discouraged and stays focused on what's coming, because 12 months is a long time, he will be able to get out of it. But as far as being a first round draft pick this year, some are even speculating that because of this injury, he just goes ahead and stays his last year at Alabama, stays one more year at Alabama because he can do that too. I wouldn't necessarily say that. It really all depends on what the draft scouts are saying that he'll get drafted. Maybe it's one of those things, kind of like the NBA, where Kevin Durant is injured, but you go ahead and take him anyways because there's nobody else like him. I don't know. I'm a little nervous about Tua, not because of injuries, but he's also injury prone. If you can tell, I mean, he gets like 1-2 surgeries a year, which I'm not knocking him. I'm just saying this is a reality for him.
Yeah.
But also, we know from Clemson playing him and from watching other games that he's a slinger. He doesn't like to do anything but go for the deep ball or go for the big play. He has a lot of tendencies on that. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence hasn't as well, but he seems to be doing that a lot. And you got to kind of be more versatile with that. You can't be a one-trick pony when it comes to the NFL because they will eat you alive. Those defenses can adjust. They're not like those strong SEC defenses that can't seem to adjust. But as far as will they drop in the rankings tomorrow night, my thought is I don't think they're going to drop this week. It depends on what Mac Jones does next week against Western Carolina. It falls perfect for them, Western Carolina, and then Auburn now becomes an even more difficult game. That's a road game. Mac Jones has 65 passes this year. Chase Bryce has 75. A lot of people say, well, Chase, Dabo Swinney likes to play his players. Chase Bryce doesn't have that many pass attempts anymore than Mac Jones does, but Mac Jones definitely has a lot less, and they've blown out a lot of teams. So he's been sitting a lot. Yeah. So that's my concern there. Another concern I have for you, Al, they only scored 3 points the rest of that game. They came back after halftime, scored 3 points, and that was it. They had a punt, they had a turnover on downs, and I believe that was it. They really didn't even have that many possessions in the second half. So for me, that's a concern. They definitely have, as Mark Packer says, those Frisbee catching dogs, but it is a concern for me that they weren't able to really score after that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I actually didn't get to see the second half of that game. I saw the first, or I saw rewatched the first half, I guess just to say, and saw the injury, but I didn't get to see the second half. So I knew they had only scored a few points. I didn't know how it happened. If it was crazy, if it was just kind of one of those things, or if Mac Jones just didn't play that well. I wasn't really sure as far as how that went. But yeah, I don't really think they're a playoff team anyways. I mean, I think they have to have a lot to happen to get into the playoffs. So I don't really think it's really going to matter. I don't care if they drop a spot or two. They have Western. I think you said Western Carolina before they go to the Plains and play Auburn. I don't think it's going to matter because I just don't think they're going to get in anyways. I think it's kind of one of those moot points where you're talking about a little more than we really need to, because I don't think it's going to make a difference in the end.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would be very frustrated if a one-loss Utah, one-loss Oregon doesn't make it and a one-loss Alabama makes it with Mac Jones. I don't know. I just would be very upset with that because he's not the guy that got him to that one loss. He's the guy that came in against a cupcake team and then against an Auburn team, which I think is beatable by most top 10 teams, really. I think Auburn is not even, they were overrated all year, really. So he's going to come in at a time where he could very easily get 2 wins. And it could very easily be an issue where Georgia or LSU beats up each other and then they jump them. And then Oregon and them, I don't know. Like I said, I don't even want to go down that road because I don't want somebody's backup quarterback being in there. But then I did have my boss tell me today, can't knock backup quarterbacks. Look at Ohio State. I think they won it all with their third-string quarterback one year, so can't really knock backup quarterbacks. We're going to take a quick 30-second break. Stay with us. When we get back, we'll talk about the ACC and what happened this week and give you our review of the Clemson and Wake Forest game. Again, we're on Facebook, YouTube, The Roar, and wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be right back after this.